The last summer. What would you do if you discovered you had only months to live? Maya Chen, a brilliant architect, faces this devastating reality when diagnosed with a rare degenerative disease. But in the most unexpected place, a botanical garden, she meets David, a blind gardener who sees the world through ancient wisdom. Their love story will challenge everything you believe about time, purpose, and what it truly means to live fully. This is The Last Summer, a story that will transform how you see your own life's challenges. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Providence Medical Center parking lot. Maya Chen, 28 years old and a talented architect with determined eyes, walked slowly toward her car. Her hands trembled as she clutched a manila envelope containing her test results. Inside her vehicle, she opened the envelope with deliberate care and read the medical report that would change everything. Progressive muscular atrophy, she whispered to herself. 12 to 18 months. The papers fell to her lap as she gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles turning white. Needing air and space, she drove to the Riverside Botanical Garden. The humid air of the tropical greenhouse was thick with the scent of orchids and jasmine. Maya found herself overwhelmed, sitting on a bench among the exotic plants, tears streaming down her face. She had no idea that this moment of despair would become the beginning of the most meaningful chapter of her life. David approached from behind a row of ferns. At 32, he moved with surprising confidence through the greenhouse despite being clearly blind, using a white cane to navigate. His kind eyes seemed to see more than most people with perfect vision. "Excuse me, but are you all right? I heard someone crying." Maya quickly wiped her eyes, embarrassed by her vulnerability. "I'm fine, just having a difficult morning." "The orchids here have a way of making people emotional," David said, sitting respectfully on the bench. "Something about their beauty and fragility." "How do you know there are orchids here?" Maya asked, puzzled. David smiled. "I work here. I'm David. I may not see them, but I know every plant in this greenhouse by scent and touch." Maya stared at him in amazement. "You work here, but you're blind?" "Yes, I lost my sight in a car accident 3 years ago. But I've discovered that gardens don't require eyes to appreciate them." Maya studied David's serene expression, puzzled by his remarkable calmness. "How do you stay so calm about losing your sight?" "I learned something from the ancient philosophers," David replied. "We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Marcus Aurelius taught that most of our pain comes from our thoughts about events, not the events themselves." "That sounds too simple," Maya said skeptically. "Simple doesn't mean easy." "What's your name?" "Maya. And you're right, simple doesn't mean easy." David led her through various sections of the garden, describing plants through touch, smell, and sound. He placed her hand on a Japanese maple. "Feel the leaves," he instructed. Maya was surprised by how much she could sense through touch alone. "The ancient Stoics believed that external circumstances don't determine our happiness," David explained as they walked. "Our responses to those circumstances do." "You make it sound like a choice," Maya said. "In many ways, it is. We can choose to focus on what we've lost, or we can choose to focus on what we still have and what we can create." Maya stopped walking, her eyes filling with tears. "What if what you still have is running out?" David paused, sensing her distress. "Then we make the most of the time we have. We don't waste it lamenting what we cannot change." That evening, Maya sat at her drafting table, surrounded by architectural plans. She stared at a half-finished design for a community center, unable to concentrate. Her phone buzzed with missed calls from her parents and business partner James, but she couldn't bring herself to answer them. The next morning, she returned to the botanical garden. She found David in the herb section, carefully tending to basil plants with practiced hands. "Maya, Maya," he said, turning toward her voice. "I was hoping you'd come back. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what you said about ancient philosophers." David stopped his work and gave her his full attention. "Do you want to talk about what's troubling you?" Maya took a deep breath. "I got some difficult news yesterday about my health. I have a rare degenerative disease." The doctors say I have 12 to 18 months before I lose my mobility completely." David was quiet for a moment, processing Maya's devastating news. "I'm sorry, that must be terrifying." "It is," Maya admitted. "I keep thinking about all the things I'll never be able to do, all the buildings I'll never design, all the places I'll never see." Seneca wrote that we are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality, David said softly. "When I first lost my sight, I thought my life was over. I was a photographer." "A photographer?" Maya was surprised. "I spent my whole life capturing moments through a lens. When I couldn't see anymore, I thought I'd lost everything that mattered." "How did you get through it?" "I learned to see differently, not with my eyes, but with my other senses. I discovered there's so much beauty I never noticed when I was focused only on what I could see through a camera." David reached out and gently touched a lavender plant. "This lavender has been here for 5 years. When I could see, I probably walked past it hundreds of times without really noticing it. Now, I know exactly how it feels, how it smells, how it sounds when the wind moves through it." "But you lost your career," Maya pointed out. "I found a new purpose. I help other people discover what I learned, that we can adapt, that we can find meaning even when life doesn't go according to plan." That evening, Maya researched Marcus Aurelius and Stoic philosophy on her computer. She took careful notes, trying to understand the principles David had mentioned. The concept of focusing on what she could influence rather than what she couldn't began to resonate with her. Finally, she picked up her phone and called her business partner, James. "James, I need to tell you something," she said, her voice steady for the first time since receiving her diagnosis. The next morning, Maya arrived at the garden early to find David already at work, carefully pruning roses with precise, purposeful movements. "You're here early," Maya observed. "I like the morning quiet. It helps me think clearly," David replied without looking up from his work. "I told my business partner about my diagnosis." "How did that go?" "He wants to take over my projects. He thinks I should take it easy." David paused in his pruning. "What do you think?" "I think I'm not ready to give up. I have a design for a community center that I've been working on for months. It's important to me." "Then finish it. What if I can't? What if the disease progresses faster than expected? Then you'll have given your best effort to something meaningful." Epictetus taught that we should focus on what is within our power and accept what is not. That evening, Maya stood at the construction site, reviewing blueprints with James and the construction foreman. Despite her hands shaking slightly, she pointed to specific details with authority. "The accessibility ramps need to be exactly as specified. This building needs to serve everyone in the community." "Maya, maybe you should let me handle the site visits. You look tired." "I'm fine, James. This is my project." "But if your condition worsens?" "My condition doesn't change the fact that I'm the lead architect on this project," Maya said firmly. "What changes is how I use my time." That evening, she found David sitting on a bench in the rose garden, listening to the sounds of evening birds and rustling leaves. "David, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you ever get angry about what happened to you?" David considered this carefully. "Sometimes, but I learned that anger about unchangeable circumstances is just suffering I choose to carry. It doesn't change the past, and it doesn't improve the present." "I'm angry," Maya admitted. "I'm angry that this is happening to me. I'm angry that I finally found my purpose as an architect, and now it might be cut short." "That's understandable. But what if instead of focusing on what might be taken away, you focus on what you can create right now?" Maya sat beside him. "It's not that simple." "No, it's not, but it's a choice we face every day. We can either be paralyzed by what we can't change, or we can be energized by what we can still influence." "How do you choose hope over fear?" Maya asked. "Practice. Every day, I practice directing my attention toward what I can actually do. My thoughts, my actions, my responses to whatever happens." "Will you teach me?" "I'd be honored." The summer days that followed were filled with learning and connection. Maya and David walked through different sections of the garden together. David taught Maya to identify plants by touch and smell, opening her senses to experiences she had never noticed. Maya showed David her architectural plans, describing them in vivid detail, sharing her vision for spaces that would serve the community. They sat by the pond feeding ducks, had picnics in the garden, and Maya worked on her community center design with renewed focus. Their conversations ranged from philosophy to dreams, from fears to hopes. One evening, Maya sat at her computer working on the community center design. Her movements were becoming slightly more labored, but her focus was intense. She picked up her phone and called her mother. "Mom," she said when her mother answered, "I need to tell you something important." The next morning, Maya arrived at the garden to find David setting up an easel with textured paper and thick paints. "What's this?" Maya asked, intrigued. "I thought I'd try something new, textured art. I may not be able to see what I create, but I can feel it." Maya watched him work, creating abstract patterns with his fingers in the thick paint. "That's beautiful, David. I realized something yesterday."
Chen, these accessibility features are really something special, the construction foreman said. "I've never seen anything like this design. Everyone deserves to access beautiful spaces, regardless of their physical abilities." That evening, Maya and David sat by the pond, watching the sunset reflect on the water. The air was warm, and the garden was filled with the sounds of evening settling in. "David, I have something to tell you. I'm listening. I think I'm falling in love with you." David turned toward her, his expression serious. "Maya, I know it's complicated. I know I'm not exactly a good long-term prospect right now. That's not what I'm thinking about." "Then what?" "I'm thinking about how grateful I am that you came into my life. And I'm thinking about how much I love you too." Maya reached for his hand. "Even knowing what you know about my condition? Especially knowing. Love isn't about how much time we have. It's about how deeply we connect with the time we're given." They sat in comfortable silence, holding hands as the last light faded from the sky. "The Stoics would approve of this, wouldn't they?" Maya asked. "Marcus Aurelius wrote that very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. I think I'm finally starting to understand that." That night, Maya's parents, Helen and Robert Chen, sat with her in her living room. The conversation was tense, filled with the weight of unspoken fears. "Sweetheart, we just want you to consider all your options," Helen said. "There are experimental treatments, clinical trials. Mom, I've looked into everything. I've chosen my path." "But you're giving up," Robert protested. "You're not even trying to fight this." "I'm not giving up," Maya said firmly. "I'm choosing how to live with the time I have. There's a difference between giving up and accepting reality. And this man, this David? Maya, you're being impulsive. You hardly know him." "I'm being intentional. I've learned the difference between reacting to circumstances and responding to them thoughtfully." "We're just worried about you," Helen said, tears in her eyes. "I know. But I need you to trust me. I need you to believe that I can make good choices about my own life, even in difficult circumstances." The next day was the grand opening of Maya's community center. A crowd gathered to celebrate, and Maya stood with David, watching as people of all ages and abilities explore the building she had designed with such care and purpose. "Look at them, David. Look how the space brings people together," Maya said, her voice filled with joy and pride. "Describe it to me," David requested. "There's a little girl in a wheelchair racing her brother to the playground. An elderly man with a walker is admiring the art gallery. A blind woman is reading the braille plaques describing the history of the neighborhood. Children are playing in the accessible playground while their parents sit on benches designed for people of all mobility levels. You did that. You created something that will serve people long after I'm gone." "I know. How does that feel?" "It feels like enough. Like I've done something meaningful with my life." At the opening ceremony, Maya addressed the crowd. Her voice was strong, though her body showed signs of the disease progression. "This building represents something I've learned over the past few months. We all face challenges that we cannot change, but we can always choose how we respond to those challenges. We can choose to focus on what we've lost, or we can choose to focus on what we can still create, still contribute, still love. The applause was thunderous, and Maya felt a deep sense of accomplishment wash over her. That evening, Maya and David walked slowly through the garden. Maya's movements were more labored now, but she radiated a peace that hadn't been there months earlier. "David, I need to ask you something. Anything. When I can't take care of myself anymore, when the disease progresses further, I don't want to be a burden." "You could never be a burden. But I understand what you're asking. Promise me you'll continue to live your life, that you won't stop growing and creating and helping people. Only if you promise me something. Promise me you'll stop worrying about the future and focus on right now, on this moment." Maya stopped walking and looked around the garden. The evening light filtered through the trees, casting everything in a golden glow. "Right now, I'm in a beautiful garden with someone I love. Right now, I've just opened a building that will serve my community for decades. Right now, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." That's all any of us can ask for. The Stoics were right, weren't they? We really do have more influence over our lives than we think. We have influence over the most important things: our thoughts, our choices, our responses to whatever life brings us. Our love. They embraced in the fading light. Two souls who had found meaning in the face of uncertainty, who had learned that the depth of our experience matters more than its duration. 1 year later, the community center bustled with activity. Children played on the accessible playground, seniors attended art classes, and people of all abilities used the building exactly as Maya had envisioned. A small plaque by the entrance read, "Maya Chen Community Center, designed with love and courage." David stood before the plaque, his fingers tracing the Braille inscription below. "What we plant in the soil of contemplation, we shall reap in the harvest of action." He placed a single white rose at the base of the plaque and whispered, "Thank you for teaching me that love isn't about time. It's about depth. It's about choosing to grow together even when the seasons change." David walked away, moving with the confidence of someone who had learned to see with more than his eyes. In his other hand, he carried a small canvas, textured with paint and filled with the abstract beauty he had created that morning. He was no longer just a gardener or a former photographer. He was someone who had learned to live fully, to love deeply, and to find meaning in every moment. The last summer teaches us that life's greatest challenges often become our greatest teachers. Maya and David's story reminds us that while we cannot always choose what happens to us, we can always choose how we respond. In focusing on what we can create, contribute, and love, we find that even in the face of loss, we can discover profound meaning and lasting purpose. Their love story shows us that the measure of a life isn't its length, but its depth, not its duration, but its impact on others. The ancient Stoics understood something that Maya and David discovered together, that true freedom comes not from having unlimited time, but from making the most of whatever time we have. Their story reminds us that every moment is an opportunity to choose courage over fear, love over despair, and meaning over emptiness. In the end, they learned that the last summer can also be the most beautiful summer, when we finally understand what truly matters.